It was the late 1970s, Cold War days. A U.S. Air Force C-130 Hercules out of Clark Air Base on a routine haul across the Pacific. 7 men on board. Nothing fancy mail, spare parts, another long stretch of ocean. But somewhere past the halfway mark, the sky bruised black, the compass spun, and the radio stuttered. Fuel dropped low. The pilot spotted a strip of land that wasn't on any map. We put the bird down on that island. We thought it meant survival, but we were dead wrong. So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. I flew ditches for a living. That is what we called it. Low and slow, hauling pallets and people, dropping mail and bombs, whatever the suits and ops tossed on the manifest and signed with a grin. I was a flight engineer on a Hercules out of Clark. Patch read 374th Tactical Airlift Wing. The bird smelled like old oil and sweat and hydraulic fluid you never fully washed out. Tail number was 65078, but we said it like a prayer. 65. Our old grumpy mule. I was not the best at anything. Not the worst either. I was good at keeping a bird alive on little sleep, and good at swearing at gauges until they behaved. It was the late 1970s. Cold War felt like a low fever you got used to. We carried crates between the Philippines and points east and north, and way out where the Pacific turns black. Move the kit. Keep the schedule. Drink bad coffee. Pretend nothing out there could reach back and touch us. The crew was 7 that run. Captain Mort had a voice like gravel and a mustache that did not obey gravity. Co-pilot was a butter bar straight from the factory, name of Latham. Eager. Too many teeth when he smiled. Navigator was a quiet major called Yates who smelled like pipe tobacco even with the no smoking signs. Crew chief was Steve, an Oklahoma farm boy who treated the bird like a stubborn cow. 2 loadmasters, McGill and Ortiz. Both could stack pallets in their sleep and had, more than once, we lifted from Clark in the morning. Sky was a pale bruise. Heat came on heavy. Our cargo was boring. It was always the boring loads that got you. Crates of spare parts, bags of mail, a few green duffels with their straps taped shut. The manifest had a funny notation on the last pallet, handwritten initials I did not know. I thought about asking. I did not. We had a long leg out toward a mid-Pacific fuel stop, then on to somewhere that would not put a stamp in your passport. We did the normal chatter. Who had fire watch last night? Who lost money to the same crusty sergeant in the day room? Who was dumb enough to date the bartender off base? Captain Mort tuned the props like a church organist. I watched the needles. Oil temp, fuel flow. The bird shivered and settled into that steady old hum that crawls under your skin and makes a home there. We ran checklists. We said the words. I looked out at the ocean. I always did. It had a way of looking back like it knew something you did not. But that is just a tired man with too much coffee talking. The day was fine. Blue water. Scattered clouds. A big, empty nothing below and a radio that hissed like an angry cat and then went quiet. We were flying a straight line across nowhere. You do not think about hours when the world is just water. You think about the next fuel stop. You think about the next day. You think about chow. You keep your mind where your hands are. You do not borrow trouble. I remember Top for maintenance telling me the night before, chin full of scars. Watch the stars when you get far out. Sometimes they move wrong out there. He said it like a joke or not. I said he was full of it. He laughed. We clinked tin mugs with coffee black as motor oil, and that was that. So we flew. We were just another bird in the stack. And if you want the truth, I loved it. The noise. The crew. The way a Hercules shrugs off weather like a bull. The way we were small but not helpless. That is the trick. Feeling small and strapped in and fine anyway. The hours unspooled. We rode the numbers. We took our turns at the bottle that said water but tasted like plastic. Ortiz passed me a chunk of jerky that might have been beef, or might have been a shoe. I chewed it anyway. The world below kept being water. The world inside the bird kept being metal and sweat and noise, the kind that gets into your bones and makes a kind of music. Normal, boring. First thing off was the compass. The magnetic one, the dumb iron circle that ignores lies. It started to shimmy. Not big, not dramatic, just a nervous little twitch like it had the chills. Yates tapped it. I saw him do it and pretend he had not. He checked the inertial system and grunted. "We've got drift," he said. "Nothing crazy, just a little." Captain said, "Hold what you got." Butterbar said, "I," with too much bounce. We were in and out of thin skunk lines of cloud. The ocean below shifted from blue to iron and back like a mood. The radio got fussy. Not dead, just not eager. Stations we should have hit clean came in threadbare. Voices clipped, some stepping on each other like two shows on the same dial. It sounded like we had ghosts down there talking in a tin can. I fiddled with the panel and got a little more juice. Did not like the feel of that either. Then we saw squalls where the weather map said none. The line went purple under us, then ripped green again like nothing had happened. Yates kept talking to the horizon like it owed him money. "We're a few degrees right of plan. Fix marking now," he wrote on his clipboard. He did not like to be wrong. He did not like when the world moved under him like a rug. The clouds stacked on themselves like they were keeping a secret. Pretty, if you were not trying to drag a big 4-engine box through it. We were not in a storm, not yet. But the sky had that fine-edged taste before a punch. The air got lumpy. The bird jostled like a tired horse. Rourke worked the throttles, smoothed her out. He muttered old hymns to the Hercules. He knew how to make her feel safe. Butterbar said he saw a flash off the water. I looked and saw only slick slate, no ships, no sun glare, nothing. He shrugged it off. I shrugged it off. Yates did not shrug it off. He made a note. He made a lot of notes once the compass twitch started. He checked time with HF radio, got a sync from a station that sounded like someone whispering under a blanket. Then he frowned. We're slipping a few seconds," he said. "Say again?" Rourke kept his voice flat, which meant he was not flat inside. "Time sync from base is behind us. Just a hair. Seconds. It shouldn't be like that." "HF is lousy today," I said. "Storm's pushing sparks around." "Sure," Yates said, but he did not sound sure. Cloud tops grew taller. The ocean below had white scratches like someone raked a comb through it. We got a wind shift we did not ask for. The inertial complained. The compass took another little dance. Drift got worse. "I want to fix off anything with a pulse," Rourke said. "Beacon, boat, I don't care. I want a number to hold." We got a number. It did not match the other number. We picked the one that felt less wrong and bent toward it. I watched fuel like it mattered more than God. It does, sometimes. Ortiz came forward and leaned in. "You smell that?" "What?" "Wet dirt." We were over nothing but water. He smelled wet dirt. I smelled wet dirt. Then it was gone. He scratched his neck and went back to his pallets. The sky got dark ahead. Not night. Not rain. Just dark. A bruise on the world. You would steer around it if you could. We did not have room for that game. Fuel said this was the road we had, and that was that. We stepped into the bruise. The sky closed. The dials got sticky. The radio sounded like it was under a mile of water. The bird kept flying because that is what she was built to do. But it felt like flying down a long hallway toward a door that might not be there when you got there. I put my hand on the panel, just rested it there, and felt a buzz I do not have a good word for. Like a tin can with bees trapped inside. I looked at Rourke, he looked at me. Neither of us said anything we believed. The ocean smelled closer. The air got cold, then warm, then something in between, like the world could not decide on one story. The compass did another shake. Yates hissed, "Son of a..." "We're getting pulled." "By what?" I said. "By the ocean," he said, and tried to make it a joke. It was not funny. Then a thin band of land popped up on the windshield, black and sharp and wrong where no land should be. Cliff faces bit out of the water. Green jungle piled up behind them. A scored line along one low shoulder like something old and flat ran through it once. Rourke said very calm, "Well, there is our ditch." We came off the bruise and onto a strip of sky that might have seen a sun once. The horizon yanked itself into place. The land came at us sideways and fast. Yates threw bearings at Rourke like rocks. Left two more. Drop altitude now. Butterbar's hands shook hard enough to make the yoke dance. Rourke steadied him with a look. "We're going to put her in that cut," he said. "Shove the nose on, ride it in. Gear down on my call." Steve, the crew chief, was already unstrapping, grabbing a flashlight that did not help anything. He yelled down the tube for the loadies to strap in and keep their teeth in their heads. I pulled a quick systems check and lied to myself about how okay we were. Fuel red, not enough to go shopping. Engines felt hot. One was running rough. The radio was chewing through static like gristle and spitting back curses. The cut looked like a runway that got into a fight and lost. It was a straight scar through the green. Dark dirt, bits of broken plank, edges crusted with roots. In the middle distance, something silver lay in vines. Old, curved. It had the narrow neck of a fighter from a war none of us had fought. A zero, I thought, like a memory from a book. That did not help anything. Rourke dropped the gear. It thunked into place like slammed doors. We came and hissed low over black sand that stuck like ash, past palms that should not have been that still. The air was heavy, like we were diving into syrup. Rourke held us off just long enough to pretend we landed on purpose. We hit the dirt. The bird bounced like a bull, then grabbed the scar and did not let go. The nose tire kicked a rotted plank halfway to the trees. I swear I heard the wood complain in a language not spoken by wood. We hammered along. I smelled hot brakes and old ghosts. The rough was bad enough to make the wing tanks groan. I called airspeed. I called distance. I called anything to make it feel like we had a say. Rourke brought the throttles up, down, up again. We tracked straight. We did not veer into the green teeth on either side. The bird threw her weight around and then surrendered, like she remembered being a truck once. We coasted to a stop with props winding down on a strip no map had agreed to exist. Everybody in the back breathed out at once. Steve said, "Well, that sucked," which was brave talk and not wrong. Engines spooled quiet. The jungle did not start chirping. That set wrong right away. No birds, no insects, no little lizards making click talk in the leaves. Just wind hitting the cliffs and getting tired. Ocean hissed somewhere out of sight. That was it. We did the business. System safe. Fuel cross feeds closed. Hydraulics bled down. Fire bottles armed just in case. We cracked the side door. Hot air rolled in, damp and weird. Ortiz said, "I still smell wet dirt," and we all did now that the bird wasn't breathing loud. "We're not leaving her," Steve said, as if anyone had suggested it. "Nobody's leaving anything," Rourke said. "We need a look. We need water. We need a radio that plays nice. We need that strip to live long enough for someone to come get us when we find a way to make them want to." Yates stuck his head out under the wing and came back with a look. "That is a zero out there," he said. "Or a cousin of one. Old war junk," Ortiz said. "Plenty of islands, 8 planes." "Yeah," Yates said, "but that one out there has paint on it like it dried last week." We went slow. We did not like the silence. We tiptoed in boots anyway. Jungle had the shine of a place where it always rains. But the leaves were too still. The light was wrong. You know how under jungle canopy everything goes green-black and little bugs throw a party in your ears? None of that. The air had the taste of metal, like thunder that forgot to clap. The wreck lay in vines, long wings shrugged up like shoulders. The skin was dull aluminum, not the flaky brown scabs you get when time gnaws. Kanji ghosted the fuselage in brushwork strokes. I ran a finger over it. The paint did not flake under my nail. It should have. It felt like it had been put there last week and then left in the sun to think about its sins. Ortiz popped an inspection panel with a grin like a kid at a junkyard. He reached in and pulled out a cartridge. "You seen this?" he said, eyes big. The brass was bright, not polished, just not 70 years old. He touched it to his tongue. "No green taste," he said. "Put it back," Steve said. "Way too fast." We moved along the cut and found the bunker line half swallowed in green. Concrete poured thick and ugly, chip-like teeth. Japanese characters stenciled above a door. Banana spiders the size of my hand on the outside. None of them moved. Not one. I hate spiders. They should have made me hate them more by moving. Their stillness was worse. We ducked in. The air got cold in there, a cellar cold. Flashlights threw white cones across steel. Cans on shelves. Big kanji labels, date stamped 1944. Ortiz laughed at that. "Yeah, sure. Fresh rations from the war." He popped one open with a P-38, because men like him carry them everywhere. Thick stew smell rolled out. It smelled like something you could eat. It should have smelled like rot. Ortiz put a pinky in and tasted. He frowned. "That is edible," he said. "Salty as hell, but not bad." We found a clock on the wall above a phone that led nowhere. Big, round face. Hand stuck. It read 0217. The second hand had stuttered and given up between ticks. I reached to adjust it out of habit. The glass was cold. When I put my palm flat on the face, I felt that tin can bee buzz again, and I pulled my hand away like it bit me. Time check, Yates said to himself. He looked at his wrist. He frowned. That's not right, he tapped. He shook it. The second hand drifted backward a little, then forward, then stopped. Butterbar came back with his face white. There's a smoke column on the south ridge, he said. I can see it across the cut. We went out and looked. There it was. Thin gray snake of it, drifting up lazy. Human smoke. Coot fire, or someone burning damp brush. We felt stupid for feeling relief. Somebody out here meant a radio, a map, a reason. We geared up to move. Water, pistols, a rifle we kept zipped in a bag for long trips we never admitted we had. I grabbed a radio because I am a slow learner. We headed for the ridge. The smoke was a line you could follow like a finger on a page. We moved through green that did not creak enough. Now and then I put my palm on a tree to steady myself and felt that buzz like the clock had in the bunker. Ortiz said, tired of keeping it secret, I hate this. We all did. We broke the tree line at the ridge and stepped onto black rock. The smoke was gone. Not blown off. Not moved. Gone like it had been erased. My throat dried out in one breath. The air went warm, cold, warm again like it was cycling through me. Yates pinched the bridge of his nose. I am going to be sick, he said. He was not the only one. Back at the bird, the shade under the wing felt like the only church left in the world. We huddled there like kids. We told ourselves lies about radios and weather. That was our first disturbance, we told each other later. But it was more than that. The island was telling us how it wanted to play. We were slow to hear it. We got to work because that is what hands do when the head does not like what it knows. Antenna up on a makeshift mast. HF radio guts spread out like a patient. Yates did a time check with Base and made a face like he bit an unripe fruit. Base says it has been 8 minutes since our last check, he said. We have been on the ground over an hour. Storm bouncing the signal, I said. The lie had splinters now. It still fit in the mouth. We called for help. We got voices back that had the wrong pitch, like they were played on a broken tape. Say again, we kept saying. Say again. The more we asked, the less real the voices became. Finally, a clean voice cut through. It named our call sign like a friend we had not seen. We show you in the soup, it said. Say your position in degrees and minutes. We did. There was a pause. Say again, it said, but softer. We have nothing there. That is water. The compass at my elbow went backward, a hair, then forward, then stopped. I stared at it until my eyes watered. I checked the others. The same dance. The clock on the panel ticked forward 1 second and then froze at 0217. It had not said 0217 before. It did now. I was not crazy about that. Co-pilot Latham had a cut on his forearm from the landing. Nothing big. He had dabbed it with a rag and taped it. The rag stuck, but the blood under it stayed bright. No scab. It feels weird, he said, like it wants to keep bleeding but doesn't know how. He smiled like a kid who just learned to shave. I wanted to shake him. Sit down, I said. Drink water. We took photos, because that is what you do when you think nobody will believe you. Ortiz walked the bunker with a cheap camera and snapped frames of clocks and cans and the way vines wrapped around steel like cloth. He took a shot of the zero. He took one of the smoke we thought we saw. He took a picture of Yates holding the radio handset like it was a live snake. The camera made all the right little clicks. It might as well have been eating our memories for later. The jungle kept not making noise. Every now and then a breeze rattled leaves and then regretted it. I kept thinking of how basses sound. Even at night. Dogs. A generator humming. Somebody kicking a can. This island sounded like a hallway between rooms nobody lived in. We felt watched. I do not mean by animals. I mean like standing in a church alone and knowing the church is not empty and wishing it was just a person behind you and not what it actually is. The hair on my arms stood up. I told myself it was humidity. It was not. We heard gunfire at noon. Short and sharp, down the cut. We ducked like idiots under a wing that would not stop a bullet. Then we laughed and called ourselves names because laughter is a tool. We went to see. Brass lay in the dirt, still warm when Steve picked one up and hissed, "Jesus." The cartridge was the wrong kind for anything we carried. It looked old, not corroded, not fresh, something in between. It had kanji stamped on the base. We listened. No voices, no footsteps, no birds flushing out of trees, which is what happens after shooting. None of that. Just the ocean pretending not to laugh. "Someone is screwing with us," Ortiz said. "Locals, pirates, whoever. They will show up with machetes and cheesy smiles any minute." "Keep saying that," Yates said. "Maybe it will be true." We found footprints near the bunker mouth, barefoot, narrow, the step of men used to going light. The prints layered each other like a bad photocopy. It looked like the same patrol walked there over itself again and again until the dirt forgot which was first. We followed them until they faded on rock that looked wet and wasn't. We followed the sound of a diesel engine for a minute until we figured out it had no source. That afternoon, a jet went overhead, not like ours. Higher, fast, sharp sound that hit the cliff and rolled down into our bones. I looked up and saw nothing but a gray ceiling. We called it in. We ran the tape backward in our heads later. Base said no aircraft in our quarter of the sky. I do not care. I heard it. Butterbar did too. He started to talk about it and then stopped because his voice shook. Near evening, the light slanted wrong. Shadows too long for the hour, angled like they were mailed from somewhere else. Time got slippery around our ankles. We kept checking our watches like drunks checking for their keys. Most of them froze at 0217 at some point and then refused to be bullied into anything else. My stomach forgot to ask for food. When I forced myself to eat, everything tasted like cardboard. When I tried not to eat, my hands shook like I needed sugar. No rules, only quirks. We took turns keeping watch anyway, as if there were rules. We sat under the wing with rifles across our knees like we were somewhere they made sense. The night sat down like a giant, not caring that we wanted it to be kind. The stars came out in more than one place at once. That is the best way I can put it. Constellations I knew tried out new positions like someone shook the sky and just let it settle how it wanted. I told myself I was too tired to see right. Night vision flickered. That was normal sometimes, but the flicker had a rhythm, like a heartbeat that was not ours. I took the goggles off and stared at the dark until my eyes made fireflies where there were none. I do not know when we fell asleep. We did, because bodies make that call even when heads do not. We woke to the smell of coffee. That was impossible. Nobody had lit anything. The smell walked right through camp and kept going. We watched it leave. We did not say anything worth keeping. Morning came at the wrong hour. Our watches said it was still before dawn. The sky said noon. The bird's panel clock still said 0217. Fresh dew clung to the wing like sweat. Steve cussed and wiped her down like he could rub the wrong off. "We are not dying here," he said. And then, quieter, "Not like this." We went back into the bunker with a plan to steal parts, steal anything, and flex the radio into good behavior. The bunker did not feel abandoned. It felt paused. Cans stacked neat. Blankets folded. A chessboard set mid-game with pieces carved like little Iron Men. I touched a pawn. It felt warm. That gave me the shakes. I checked a locker and found a photograph of men in uniforms not ours. Braves' faces. Caps at angles. Writing on the back in neat lines of kanji. The ink looked wet. I rubbed it with my thumb and it did not smear. It should have looked old. It looked now. We heard boots. Not ours. Slap of leather on concrete. We turned as one. They were there and not. 5 men in old field uniforms, rifles with long snouts, bayonets on their belts, eyes flat with a kind of tired pride I have seen in every army. They walked in a line past us without looking, like we were smoke, or they were. The lead man paused at the clock on the wall, glanced at it, scowled, and kept moving. We did not breathe. We did that thing you do, holding so still your bones ache like they will crack. Ortiz whispered, "Holy Mary." And the nearest soldier's head twitched like he heard something through a wall. Then they were gone, not vanished. Just moved down a hall that did not exist, and when we stepped after them, all we found was a blank concrete wall. On the floor where the last one stepped, a fresh boot print. On a shelf to the right, a helmet that had not been there a blink ago. The strap was frayed where it had rubbed a man's neck. I touched it and felt the bee buzz, and my fingertips went numb. "That clock," Yates said hoarsely. "Everything points at that clock." "It points at 0217, I said. I hated the sound of those words in my mouth. "We should try a thing," he said. He had that look pilots get when they decide they are wrong enough to be brave. "Watch this." He stood by the clock and stared at its stuck hands. "If this place is glued at a moment," he said, "maybe it treats now like a circle." He raised his hand. We yelled at him. He took the minute hand between finger and thumb and turned it one tick forward. The bunker heaved. That is the only word for it. Concrete groaned like a ship in ice. The air went cold enough to hurt. My eyes watered. The lights that were not lights in the hall flickered. For a blink, the bunker was full, not of us, but of a dozen men in old uniforms, shouting in a language I do not speak while the ground shook like it had been hit. A shell blast clapped far away or right next to my teeth. Then it all slotted back. The clock's hand slid back to 0217 like rubber. "Do not do that again," Steve said through his teeth. "Okay," Yates said, which was not a promise. We went back to honest work, radio guts, wires, antennas strung like spider webs out of the bunker mouth. We got a clean link for 30 seconds. In that 30 seconds, we gave a position nobody recognized and described an island nobody had a name for. The voice on the other end said our signal was faint but clear. He asked what time it was. 4 of us looked at our wrists and said a number that did not match. The voice read the time back to us. It was behind us by hours that should have belonged to yesterday. That is when Latham started bleeding again. He was not doing anything. He was drinking water and trying not to cry like a kid because all his training had fallen through his fingers like sand. The rag on his forearm went dark in a second and he swore. We unwrapped it. The cut was the same size as yesterday. Bright blood pooled like someone forgot the clotting step in the design. I started pressure, then stopped, then started again, because my head told my hand something was off. It felt like pressing on a bruise that refused to admit it. We burned a piece of cloth and pressed that on. He yelped. The wound did not scab, but the bleeding slowed because we told it to. He smiled again the way kids do when you say it is fine and they know you are lying but want to believe you. "Time does not move right here," Yates said, holding his temples with 2 fingers as if he could steady the math. "It sticks, then jumps. The clocks show the stop. The smoke shows the jump. I think the island is a knot. Maybe it is tangled up in its own past. That does not help me fly us off it," Rourke said, but his voice had some respect in it, like he had seen men get a bird home on worse ideas. Then the shooting started again, very near. We ran to the cut like idiots again. On the far end, figures moved fast. The old uniforms, the way they kept low to the ground. They were not looking at us. They were looking at someone else you could not see. One of them pitched forward like someone kicked his feet out. His rifle clattered. He got up again slow, the wrong way, like time backed him up and hit play again and said, "No, try it like this." We did not fire. We did not even raise our rifles. It felt like bringing a knife to a painting. Then a round snapped off a rock near my foot and I moved, because the part of your body that likes living does not care about metaphysics. Steve grabbed my collar. "Back," he said. Back under the wing. We retreated to our church. We looked at each other like men in stories do, the kind where you know who dies next and why. Nobody said that out loud, because some talk you do not make real that way. Ortiz said, "We should go to the beach." "What for?" I said. "Because it is not the jungle." That was logic I could sit with for 10 minutes. We took a path that felt like it had been a road once. Black sand beach, lava rock like broken glass, ocean rolling in soft like it did not care we were screwed. On the tide line, a mess of flotsam, old rope, bits of wood, a bottle with a note, which is a thing I thought only happened in stories for kids. I picked it up anyway. The glass had bubbles in it from old ways of making. The cork crumbled. The note was in Japanese. The date at the bottom read 1944. The ink looked fresh. I put it back in the bottle and set it down like you put a baby you do not love in a crib. The horizon did a trick, a smudge that might have been a ship. Then nothing. Then a smudge again. It made me dizzy. "Can we leave it?" Ortiz said. "Just leave the island. Walk out into the water and keep going and leave it behind like a bad bar fight." "You will drown," Yates said. Better than this, Ortiz said. He did not mean it. We went back to work. The smarter you are, the more work you do when the world stops making sense, because it keeps your hands from hitting your own face. We got the radio stable enough to send a steady ping on a frequency someone would hear if they were bored and loved us. We kept the bird ready. Fuel we had could keep the APU humming. Batteries were good. Hydraulics were taut. Steve polished her like a priest. That night, we heard men singing. Not us. Not English. A marching song, or a barracks chant. It echoed down the strip and out over the water. It made me cry without my permission. I did not know why. It sounded like men who expected to die and wanted their last song to belong to their brothers. We lost Ortiz in the morning and got him back at sunset, and he was not the same. That is how fast the island changed the rules. He said he was going to the bunker for water. He was whistling a tune he always whistled because it annoyed Yates. He rounded the wingtip and the green took him without a sound. We were 3 steps behind. We reached the bunker mouth and it was not there. We stared at concrete that had not been there the day before and was now but blank, like a wall put up to hide a room. We turned in a circle with guns up and curses out, and there was no Ortiz, no boot prints, no annoyed whistling, just a sweet stink in the air like fruit that turned. Back to the wing, Rourke said. We anchor here. We do not chase ghosts in green. We did not anchor. We scattered like chickens and called his name and came back because the green is big and we are not. The ocean laughed at us again. Hours passed. Our watches argued about how many. The sun started down and then changed its mind. It hung on a branch of cloud like a red coin, then fell behind the ridge like someone lost their grip. Ortiz walked into camp from the side. None of us were watching. He was carrying a can of rations with 1944 stamped on it, and he had a look on his face like he had just been told a joke in a language he used to know when he was small. We were playing cards, he said. Who? Steve said. The guys in the bunker, Ortiz said. We all said things at once. He shook his head. No, not like that. I saw them, and they saw me, but they did not see me. I sat with them. They did not move around me. Time pooled. I picked up a card, and it was blank. I put it down, and it had a king of hearts on it. Then the clock struck 2:17. It does not strike, I said. It did, he said, not looking at me. It rang like a church bell, and everyone stood up at once. I stood with them, and none of us knew why. Your face, Latham said. You have. Ortiz wiped at his forehead. His hand came away with soot. There was a black smear over one eye like someone had slapped him with ash. He rubbed it harder. It did not go. That is new, he said. He did not sound interested. That scared me more than if he had screamed. We ate because men do that when they cannot solve their own stories. The jerky tasted like nothing. The can of stew he brought back tasted too much like something. I spit mine into the sand and told myself it was because of salt, not fear. After the sun made up its mind and left, we set a perimeter like a bunch of morons playing army on an island that played a different game. The night kept going and did not. The stars not only moved, they flickered in and out like someone throwing a switch. I felt eyes, not in the bushes, above, below, inside my skull, not like a god, like a machine that wants to count you. The singing came back, closer. Then we heard the chopping thud of a helicopter you could feel in your ribs, the good, heavy kind. Jolly green. I stood so fast my knee cracked. Here, I yelled, here. The others yelled with me. A beam of light tore the sky like a zipper. It passed over us and did not stop. It went on into the night in a direction that was not possible. The beam bent. That should not happen. It did. The sound of the rotors went away like someone turned down a dial. We stood with our mouths open and watched the beam of a thing that might save you bend like a stick and vanish into a night that had no business eating light. That is when Steve started laughing. Not funny laughing. The kind you do when your mind goes to a room with locked doors. He laughed until he coughed and then he said, I am fine, and did not stop looking at nothing. We pulled him back under the wing and sat on our cases of spare parts like kings on thrones made of junk. Latham's bandage was dry now. His cut looked newer than it had any right to. His beard should have had a day's growth. It did not. Mine did not either. We rubbed our chins like idiots and grinned at each other, and nobody said the obvious. We stared at the photographs Ortiz had taken. The first few came out clean. The bird under the wing, the zero in vines, the clock. Then the pictures got faint, blank, except for shadows that did not belong to us. In one, you could see 5 shapes in the bunker where we stood, not in our places, in theirs. One man had his hand on the clock and was not Yates. I tore that one in half and threw it into the sand. The pieces stuck to my shoe. I kicked them off like a dog with burrs. Around midnight, the strip went bright. Floodlights none of us had lit. Men ran across it in old helmets with nets, shouting. A siren howled. We saw a plane come in from the sea. Low, belly down, wheels up, sparks throwing in a hard bevel behind it. It slid past us on a stripe of years and vanished into trees that were not there. We felt the heat of it on our faces. We touched our cheeks and winced like we had sat too close to a fire. There was no fire. We did not look at each other. The ocean hissed and brought in a wave with something in it. A crate. We dragged it out. It had U.S. markings from a war we only inherited. We pried it open with a bar. Inside were bandages, morphine in bottles with glass stoppers, a little book with instructions printed crooked. The bandages were white like snow. The morphine was clear as rain. None of it should have been that way. We closed the crate and pushed it back into the sea. At some point, the island made a sound I still hear sometimes when I am too tired to fight it. A low hum that is not in your ears but in your teeth. A pressure, like when you dive deep and your head asks questions your lungs cannot answer. It climbed enough to make me cry again for reasons I do not want to treat like poetry. Then it dropped, and with it something in my chest like a chain went slack. I said to the others, "We need to get off this thing." No one argued. We made a plan that was not a plan, but felt like one. We would run the radio hot and dirty for as long as it would take for someone to triangulate our sorry asses. We would keep the bird lit and friendly. We would mark the strip with anything that burned straight. We would fire flares. We would not follow smoke that led nowhere. We would not touch clocks. We would not eat stew that dated before our parents were dancing in the dark. We set to it. I coaxed the radio until it gave me more than angry static. We held a fix on a frequency that made sense. We sent our call sign and a weird prayer I did not know I believed. Any friendly listening, this is a Hercules in distress on an uncharted island at coordinates we have read 3 times. We need a vector. We need a rescue bird. We need a ship. We need a miracle. A voice came back, clear as your mother. "We hear you," it said. "Hold that transmit, keep talking. We are painting you, stand by." I fell in love with a man I would never meet. We kept talking. We said names and numbers and the words you say when you want to be found. We fired a flare. The red went up. It left a line like a scratch in a painting that stayed after. It hung too long. The shade under the wing trembled with heat that did not arrive. The flare came down in a way I do not have words for. It fell and never hit the ground, then did again. Then the island got mad. The singing came back, and it was not in the trees. It was in us. We felt the song using our bones as a drum. The bunker lights we had not turned on popped alive. Clocks that could not tick did. They ticked and ticked until they only said one thing. 0217. The ground shook like a dog with water in its coat. I heard engines, old and new, layered like a bad harmony, propellers and jets and something like chains. Men came out of the trees. Not ours. Not theirs. Some in uniforms I knew. Some in clothes I knew my grandfather might have pointed at. They did not look at us. They moved through us like we were fog. One passed right through Latham. He screamed and folded. He was not dead. He just got not here for a second. When he came back, his eyes were wrong. Not blind, just like he was looking at a world half a step to the left. We backed up against the bird like a wall. Steve had a wrench like a club. McGill had a rifle. He did not point at anything because the island made a joke out of pointing. Yates had his hand on the panel clock like he could hold the tide. I had the radio in my lap and a voice in my ear telling me to breathe. A man in an old officer's cap stepped up onto the strip, looked at the sky, and drew a sword. That should have been ridiculous. It was not. He shouted a command. The men around him cheered and ran. Right through us. Cold went through my guts like I was a window left open in winter. I gagged. I tasted smoke and something sweet and rotten. 2 minutes, the voice in my ear said. Hold your transmit. We have a bearing. Do not move. I wanted to laugh at that. Do not move. Sure. We stood frozen while ghosts or men or both fought a battle in a language I did not speak on a runway that had not been here yesterday and would not be tomorrow. Bullets slapped dirt at our boots. A shell whined and did not land, and then did. Somewhere that was also here. The zero in the vines shrieked like aluminum being folded by God. The clock in the bunker struck with no bell and winked its dead hands at us like a joke you do not tell in polite company. Rourke said, very even, when they get here, we go. We do not think. We do not pack. We get on whatever they send, and we take our sins with us. Then the ocean coughed, and a black shape shouldered up beyond the reef. A ship. Not old. Not ours. Not ours. Maybe ours. It was wrong distance. Close and far. I blinked and it was smaller, or bigger. A light shot from its bow like a finger pointing at us. The voice in my ear said, we have you. We have you. Hold. You ever try to hold when the world is unbuttoning itself? We did. And the island did its best to unmake our standing still. It brought a smell of cinnamon like my grandmother's kitchen. It brought a scream like a rabbit in a snare, and then made it a child. It brought the touch of a hand on the back of my neck that felt like the day before I enlisted when a girl I never married told me to stay. The island was not a place. It was a set of choices you did not make and the memory of making them anyway. It wanted you to believe it. It almost had me. Then a light fell out of the sky on a rope. A real one. This one did not bend. It did not vanish into a curve. It burned straight as a line of orders you cannot argue. Rotor wash hit us like rain, hot, clean air. Men in helmets leaned out and shouted over the thump. Their mouths matched their words. Their eyes were new. Move, Rourke shouted, like we were recruits. We moved. We grabbed Latham and his bandage that would not commit to healing, and we sprinted across a ground that tried to be more than one thing. We slid on our asses into the basket. Hands pulled us in. The helo bucked like a wild horse and heaved us up. The rope burned through time and into right now. Something tugged. The island did not want to let go. We lifted. The bird got small. Our wing church looked like a toy. The bunker mouth gaped like a tooth pulled wrong. Men in old uniforms looked up and did not see us. The clock said 0217. It said it as the rotors hammered the air into shape. Then the island blurred. The water turned to static. The cliffs leaned in like they wanted to whisper. The helo climbed anyway. The pilot swore through his teeth. You boys picked the worst places, he said, like we had done it for fun. I looked at his sleeve. The patch was a unit I knew, but not like that. Colors a hair different. Details wrong in ways I only understood when they kept me awake years later. I did not say that then. I clung to a strap and tried not to throw up into my lap. We came up above clouds, and then the clouds were gone, and then we were over black water with nothing in any direction, and the ship that had been there was not. The pilot talked to a voice on a net I could not hear. He kept glancing at a clock that did not say 0217. I wanted to kiss it. We flew long. Or short. Time on the helo did not act like a joke. It acted like time. We landed on a deck that moved in a way a deck should. Men ran. A corpsman pulled Latham away by the good arm and did not look confused when his cut looked new and old. He did the work you learn from other men and from books. He swabbed. He stitched. The blood listened to him. It obeyed. They put blankets over us even though the air was thick and warm. They gave us water that tasted like a hose and a bar of soap and a cup of something sweet. I cried in the mine. I did not apologize. The taste of sweetness broke something I had been holding on to so tight my hands forgot how to open. The pilot came by later and put his hand on the rail and said, "We got you off an island that was not there when we went around again. That is just between us." We nodded like we understood. We did not. We understood the kind of secret that leaves a mark without leaving a scar. That part I remember clean. Back at Clark, they debriefed us. Questions neat, answers messy. Everything stamped, classified. Medical poked. Said we should have stubble. We didn't. Watches stuck at 0217. Maintenance tore into the bird. Found black sand in wiring looms. Salt where no water touched. A Japanese shell casing stamped 1944 under the floor. Still warm when they pulled it out. Nobody wanted to sign that form. The crew scattered. Some called it stress. Some tried to solve it. Most shut up. Me, I kept flying. Didn't trust the ground after that. Every so often I wake up at 0217. No clock in the room. I still know. Sometimes I smell wet dirt over blue water. Sometimes I hear boots walking past when I'm alone. We didn't win, we just got out. That's all. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.